You ever have that feeling like you're just talking to a wall? You've got this mountain of really important, complex stuff to get through, but your students, they're just passively listening. Or, let's be honest, maybe not listening at all. It's one of the biggest challenges we face, right? How do we turn them from just sitting there into actually doing something with the material? Well, what if I told you the solution isn't some kind of magic? It's all about how we design the learning experience. It's about building a structure where the students themselves are the ones driving the entire process. So today, we're going to dive deep into the research behind two really powerful strategies designed to do exactly that: the jigsaw method and think, pair, share. So here's the game plan. First, we're going to build the case for why collaboration even matters. Then, we'll put these two methods head to head in a showdown. After that, we'll take a closer look at the unique strengths of think, pair, share, see where all the data collides, and then wrap it all up with a clear takeaway and some things you can try in your classroom this week. Okay, so before we pit jigsaw against think, pair, share, we have to ask a more basic question. Why even bother with all this collaborative learning stuff in the first place? We need to lay the foundation and see if there's solid evidence that this approach is actually better than just, standing at the front of the room and talking. Now, this quote right here is absolutely key. It separates real cooperative learning from that chaotic group work we all probably remember from school. The magic words here are structured, clear goals, and maybe the most important one of all, individual accountability. This isn't about letting one kid do all the work while the others coast. It's a system, a carefully designed machine that makes sure everybody has to pull their weight, and as a result, everybody learns. So that brings us to the main idea, the thesis for this whole first section. Structured collaboration just plain works. The research is pretty clear that it's a powerful way to boost not only what students can do academically, but also how much they want to do it. But, a thesis is just a claim. So let's look at the proof. All right, check this out. This 2019 study gives us our foundational evidence. The researchers basically ran an experiment comparing a group using cooperative learning to a traditional lecture-style group. And the results? They found what they called a remarkable development in speaking skills and a huge jump in students' internal motivation. Now, for sure, there's a limitation. It focused on Iranian English language learners, so we have to be careful about applying it everywhere. But the finding is so clear and positive, we're giving it a 4 out of 5 on our impact score. The evidence is solid. Collaboration works. Okay, so we've settled the why. We know cooperative learning is a good thing. So now let's get to the how. This brings us to the main event, the big showdown between two of the most popular strategies out there: jigsaw versus think, pair, share. In one corner, you've got think, pair, share, or TPS. It's this beautifully simple 3-step dance. Kids think on their own, then they pair up to talk it out, and finally they share their ideas with the whole class. And in the other corner, you have jigsaw. This is where every student becomes an expert on one little piece of the topic, and then they're responsible for teaching that piece to their home group so the whole team can put the puzzle together. And this is where things get really interesting. We're now introducing our antithesis, the counter-argument. The idea isn't just that these methods are different. It's the possibility that one of them might be way, way better at hitting one of the holy grails of teaching, getting students to ask their own questions and to drive their own learning. To test this idea, we're going to look at this amazing piece of action research by Galen Query. She directly compared jigsaw and TPS in her own second grade classroom, and her core finding was just undeniable. The jigsaw method led to a dramatic increase in the number of questions students were asking. Now, yeah, the sample size is tiny, just one classroom, and that's a definite limitation. But because it's a direct head-to-head comparison, its value for our analysis is huge. We're giving it a 5 out of 5 for impact. And when you actually see the data on a chart, it's just stunning. Look at this. At the baseline, you've got a low number of student questions. You bring in think, pair, share, and you see a nice little bump, which is great. But then look at jigsaw. It's a massive spike. This suggests something really powerful is happening in their brains. When you make a student responsible for teaching something, they can't just passively absorb it. They have to wrestle with it, they have to own it, they have to figure out how to explain it. And that process naturally makes them ask more questions. But wait, the story isn't over. Just when it looks like jigsaw is the undisputed champion of student engagement, we've got to pump the brakes and look at another pile of research. Because while jigsaw is incredible for deep inquiry, think, pair, share, well, it has its own secret weapons. And this quote right here gets to the heart of it. The genius of think, pair, share is its simplicity. The keywords here are simple and gradual. See, Jigsaw can be a pretty complex thing to set up, but TPS, it's a low prep, low anxiety routine. Its whole purpose is to create the super safe, step-by-step path for students to start participating. And we have some really powerful recent data to prove it. A 2022 study by Ho and Lam measured student speaking scores before and after a 12-week intervention using TPS. And you can see it right there. The average score jumped from 1.40 up to 1.67. Now that little p less than 0.001 is the real kicker. In plain English, that means there's a less than 0.1% chance that this result was just random luck. This was real, measurable improvement. So let's break down that Ho and Lam study. Not only did they find that massive improvement in speaking skills, but their interviews with students showed that TPS also lowered anxiety and boosted their confidence. Yeah, the lack of a control group is a bit of a limitation, but when you combine that hard quantitative data with the students' own words, you've got a really strong case for TPS as a skill-building tool. That's why it gets a solid 4 out of 5 for impact. Okay, we've looked at the evidence for Team Jigsaw and the evidence for Team TPS. Now it's time to bring it all together. Welcome to the data war. This is where we lay all three studies out on the table and see where the research lines up, where it clashes, and most importantly, why. All right, let's break this down. First column, what does everyone agree on? All three studies slam the gavel down on the same verdict. Structured cooperative learning is way better than old school passive teaching. No contest. But that second column is where the debate happens. Query's study says Jigsaw is the king of getting kids to ask questions. Ho and Lam's study makes a super strong case for TPS when it comes to building skills and making kids feel less anxious. So why the different results? The third column tells us everything. It's because they were measuring different things. Query was looking at the type of participation, while Ho and Lam were looking at measurable skill. They asked different questions, so it's no surprise they got different answers. So what's the verdict here? Who wins the data war? Well, here's the thing. There isn't one winner. The conflict we see in the research isn't a contradiction. It's actually a clarification. It's telling us that the best method really just depends on what you're trying to accomplish in that specific lesson. And all of this boils down to three big unifying takeaways. Number one, the foundational idea is true. Structured cooperative learning works. Number two, if your goal is to have students dig deep, ask a ton of questions, and really take ownership of dense material, Jigsaw is an absolute powerhouse. And number three, if your goal is to build a specific skill, like speaking, and do it in a way that builds confidence and feels safe, Think, Pair, Share is the perfect tool for that job. Okay, that's the research, that's the theory. But how do we actually put this stuff into practice? Let's translate everything we've talked about into 3 specific steps you can take in your classroom, like this week. First, and this is the most important one, start with your goal. Before you even think about which strategy to use, decide what the main point of the lesson is. Is it all about deep content coverage and getting students to ask their own questions? The research points you straight to Jigsaw. Is it about practicing a skill and building up confidence? Then Think, Pair, Share is going to be your best friend. The goal always dictates the tool. Now, if you do choose Jigsaw, the absolute key to making it work is to structure it for genuine expertise. This means every single student must have a piece of the puzzle that is unique and essential. Their teammates have to need their information to get the full picture. That need, that interdependence, is the engine that forces them to become the teacher, and it's what lights the fire for all those questions we saw in the research. And finally, if you're using Think, Pair, Share, please do not skip or rush that first step. Protect the silent, individual think time like it's gold. This isn't just quiet time. This is where the magic happens. It's where students are making connections, forming their first ideas, and building up the little bit of confidence they need before they open their mouths to talk to a partner. A really good pair and a confident share are impossible without a solid think first. So at the end of the day, all this research brings us back to a question you have to ask yourself. It's not about which strategy is better in a vacuum, but which one is the right one for your students on this day for this lesson. So as you plan your next class, ask yourself, what's my number one goal here? Is it to spark discovery or is it to build a skill? The answer to that question will tell you exactly which tool to pull from your toolbox.